Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
Bedford's Cost Segregation specializes in generating significant tax savings via their engineering-based studies for commercial real estate clients nationwide. Founded in 2002, Bedford is one of the largest independently owned cost segregation providers in the country, with over 14,000 studies completed to date in multiple offices throughout. The most important decision ownership can make when incorporating cost segregation within their real estate portfolio is selecting the right provider. With only 43 certified cost segregation professionals nationwide, Bedford is proud to employ 8 of them and takes the quality of their people as seriously as their studies. Every certified cost segregation professional has passed a rigorous test combining knowledge of technical engineering issues, legal tax issues, ethics standards, and requires a strict level of prior work experience to be eligible. Bottom line, not all cost segregation providers are created equal. So be sure to take the decision seriously from the beginning to protect yourself for years to come. Please contact Bedford's Business Development Director, Frank Judici, to learn more. This is your daily real estate syndication show. I am your host, Whitney Sewell, and I first want to thank you for listening to the show and just being a loyal listener. We are very grateful. We could not do it without you. We hope that we are bringing lots of value to you and your business every day by having the experts on that we do. We work very hard to find them and to interview them well. And we have some big things coming up in the future. We're trying to do it better and better all the time. Our team's improving constantly, and our processes are improving constantly. I want to remind you that you can go to the podcast page at lifebridgecapital.com, and there's a button there now where you can leave feedback for us. I've mentioned it a few times on the show, but I just want to put that out there again so you know that we would love to have your feedback. We value that. We're making changes now based on lots of feedback that we've received over the last few weeks. One thing I wanted to discuss with you today is part of my story, part of how we got to where we're at today. One thing that led to closing on over 100 million in real estate last year. It's hard to believe just when I say that number. But one thing that led us to that is overcommitting. And I want to explain to you what I'm talking about when I say overcommitting, because it could be a bad thing, right? You do have to be somewhat realistic, of course, if you're going to think about over committing to something. What does that mean? Who all does that affect? Most likely it affects more than just you. I know it did me. That is for sure. But by doing this, it has affected us, our entire family in a good way for a long period of time. I hope, right? It has right now anyway. But for the foreseeable future, it's changed everything. And one example, there's many examples, and I'll explain that maybe in some other shows. One thing, we sold our farm. And that's one, we sold our farm and everything related to that. We overcommitted to make the commercial real estate business happen quite a few years ago now. But, when we jumped into this business, and I knew that would be a distraction. But during that time, the main way I want to share with you that we overcommitted was starting a daily podcast. And numerous things around that led to many other things. But initially, I was barely even listening to it. I barely knew what a podcast was when I was exposed to the thought of starting our own show. And I mean, being a host of a podcast, I never imagined that it would be me speaking into a microphone as much as I have. But now I've been able to speak from many stages in front of thousands of people numerous times. It's allowed me to make so many connections that I never would have had if not for taking that leap and really overcommitting. And let me explain a little more. So, most people will start a weekly podcast, right? And when I started having these thoughts about a daily podcast, am I going to do it daily, 7 days a week? Am I going to commit to that? Can I make that happen? I started talking to lots of other podcast hosts, as I'm sure you have. If you have a podcast, or if you're thinking about it, you're calling people like myself or other hosts and saying, how do you do that? How much work is that? What do I need to know? How do I figure these things out? Right. And that's what I did. I contacted all these people that I was friends with in the industry that had podcasts. And one common thing that they all said was that it's so much work. It's so much work. I can't hardly keep up, Whitney. I don't know, what I'm going to do to get the next week's show done, or find the next guests, or keep up with the show notes, or editing the audio and the video. And I mean, time and time again, I heard hosts talk about or tell me how much work it was. And I'll tell you one thing they all had in common, and that was that they were doing a weekly show. So after some time talking to those different individuals and thinking through that, it made me think, well, when all those other hosts continued telling me how much work it was, it's kind of discouraging, right? It was kind of discouraging, and thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't do this, And then also at two different conferences, I met with one individual at two different conferences who were very big names in our business, in our industry. And I would bet that 99% of you listening would know who these people are just by their name. And I was talking to those individuals personally and telling them about the podcast, obviously saying, I'd love for them to be a guest and help promote them that way as well, and have them on the show. And both of them said, Whitney, don't do that. Are you crazy? Don't do that. That is too much work. And so normally I was really good at saying, or blocking out the naysayers, right? Except for now, these two individuals, very big names that I trusted and respected. And so it made me start to question. So I had a mentor, which thankfully, which I highly recommend. You have a mentor. I've had numerous now for different things, and see it's just extreme value in that. But at this moment, I went to my mentor and I was explaining what happened. And he said, Whitney, that's exactly why you have to do it, because it's too much work. It's too much work. Most other people are not going to do it. And so I thought, okay, I can do this. And so we committed, and it was overcommitting. It was, I had no idea what that was going to entail by committing to doing a daily podcast. But I will say, by doing that, it made me grow in so many ways that I never imagined and never saw coming. And one of those was just managing to get all of that done. I told you, the hosts that were doing a daily show, they were struggling, right, to find guests. They were struggling to get the show notes done, the audio editing, the video editing, all those things. And they were doing all that themselves. That's why they were struggling. And I know personally that if I had tried to do a weekly podcast, that I would have been doing the same thing. I would have been trying to do every part of the show, trying to save every penny that I possibly could. And that would mean me learning to edit the audio, me getting that done, learning to edit the video, getting that done, and trying to do it all myself. And I know trying to do all those things, even for one show a week, meant me getting way behind and not being able to do it to the quality that we've been able to do. And so I knew from the very beginning that was not an option, that I was not going to be able to get all that done. And so by overcommitting, it allowed me to scale fast, because there was no option for me to do it all myself. So immediately I built a team. I found virtual assistants. I found people who were good at all those things that I needed to get done. I broke that podcast down into all these tasks, all these things, and built processes and thought through what has to be done first and second and third and fourth, figure out how to organize that. So I had a team of 4 VAs from all over the world. And then I had another VA that was in the States that helped me to manage those VAs in that process. And I've done other shows on VAs, and I'll probably do more because it's definitely a popular topic, because we're all trying to figure out how to do the more important tasks, right? Spend less time on the repetitive things or that someone else can do. And I highly encourage you to do that and listen to those other shows about VAs. I just did a series on how we just hired my personal assistant, just Class A talent. She's doing amazing. So we went through a long process, but it was worth it every way, every part of that, every step of that path. It was very worth it. So I encourage you to listen to that series. But by overcommitting, that made me push myself to build the team, to build the processes. So then we could do so many more shows than I ever thought I possibly could. And by the time you're hearing this, we'll have almost recorded 1,000 shows. It's so hard to believe that we've done that. But I wanted to ask you to think about, you think you're committed to something right now. You think, or you believe that, okay, maybe I can do a daily podcast. But what if you had to do, 5 a week? What if you had to do 10 a week? Well, build the process, build that system so you can manage to do 20 a week if you needed to. Okay. And then doing that 1 or doing that 7 a week is just not near as big a deal. But figure that out. Build that system, build that process. Because when you overcommit, when you have that level of commitment, it's going to push you to think differently, as opposed to me figuring out a way that I could edit every piece of video and audio content and writing all the show notes, doing that myself. I had to think bigger. I had to think about those systems and processes that would allow me to scale fast, right? Or from the very beginning, right? Do 7 a week instead of 1. And so that's just one example of how I overcommitted from the very beginning and how it pushed us and pushed me, to grow my network that much faster, to add that much more value to so many more people, even just meeting that many more people through the podcast. It pushed us in so many different ways. But I just encourage you right now to think about, what are you committed to? What do you think your next goals are? Those next things that you are looking forward to completing to take your business to the next level. And then think about, what would it take to 5x that or 10x that? What kind of systems, what would have to happen? Think through that before you think, okay, I'm going to do this, this 1 time a week. Well, what would have to happen if I had to do it 7 times a week or 27 times a week? And maybe it's not, and I'm just saying, apply that to different parts of your business. It doesn't just, only have to be podcasting. We've done that in many other areas as well. And I encourage my team to always think that way too when we're building processes. Well, if this is a monthly thing, we'll figure out or build a process so we can do it, every week if we need to. What does that look like? Help us to, let's be that organized and let's have that process so we're always improving it. Every time we think of a way that we can improve something, well, we have the process there. So that way we can put it in there right there. And we know the next time that's the way we'll do it. And it's just continually adding and adding and adding to that, but then also teaching your team to think that way as well. So I hope this has been encouraging to you and just thinking through, overcommitting in some ways, and how is that helpful, or is it helpful to you to think bigger, to change your mindset, stretch your mindset just a little bit, in scaling your systems and your processes so you can do more, but hopefully have, less of your time spent on those repetitive things so you can spend time on other things. So think through that. I hope you've had a blessed day. I'm thankful to have power again now and be able to work some more, get some more work done. But reach out if we can help in any way. You're always welcome. Go to lifebridgecapital.com, go to the contact page, and you can get connected with me, have a call with me as well. So I look forward to helping you personally, if at all possible. Please provide feedback on the podcast page as well. We would appreciate that. And because we are always trying to improve the show, but have a blessed day.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.